In this session, we'll be taking a look at what are security policies. We'll also look at the various types of security policies, and we'll be looking at one specific security policy called the email policy for an organization. So let us start with this. Let us first take a look at what is a policy. A policy is nothing but a written document with a set of guidelines or principles that will be followed by an employee of an organization. So what is the use of all these guidelines or principles is it will aid the employee in taking a decision. It will help the employee to take a decision. That's it. Let us take an example here. Say you're going to a coffee shop, you're having coffee with your friends, and a friend of your friend comes in. Say you're meeting a third person who is not part of your organization, and this person walks in and he starts asking questions about the project you're working on. Maybe he wants to gather some details about the projects you're working on for this firm. So now a third person who is not part of your organization is asking critical information about projects you're working on. Should you divulge that kind of information to the third person? So now comes the company policy. What is your company policy? Any company will not encourage, will not support such kind of information leakage. So obviously an employee should not reveal such information to a third person. So policy helps an employee to take some decisions. Not only an employee, the top management or anyone in the organization. When you have a set of standard policies, it will help us. It will help the employees to take decisions. That is it. So here we are focused on security policy. What is the security policy? It is again a written document, and it contains identification of all the assets of an organization and identification of all kinds of threats that can happen to these assets. So everything should be drafted out in the security policy. What are the assets an organization has, and what kind of threats these assets can face, and how to protect these threats. In certain scenarios, if an incident happens, some kind of damage happens, how to invoke an incident response for this kind of a damage, and how to continue with the business. A security policy should draft all these things. Not only that, the company's employees should know what is the security policy, and they should be updated with any changes to the security policy, and the security policy should also be updated regularly. I hope you all now know what is a security policy. It's nothing but a written document that details what are the assets for the organization and how to protect these assets from against any kind of threats. There are various types of security policies. That's what we are seeing here. One is acceptable use policy. That is the first policy. And the second policy is access control policy, change management policy, information security policy. We have incident response policy, remote access policy, email communication policy, disaster recovery policy, business continuity plan. So what are these policies? Each policy is for a specific type of an incident or an task. For instance, when you talk about remote access policy, this document contains all the guidelines that an user or an organization should follow when it grants remote access for an employee. So now, because of the pandemic, all the employees are working from home. Most of them, all of them, will be connecting to their organization's network remotely. So remote access to the systems need some set of guidelines, set of procedures, and set of principles to be followed. It's not that anyone who can just like that ask for remote access will be given remote access, because organizations should take in extraordinary care to prevent any kind of attacks or data leakage, and that's why they have to follow a set of standard policies, and these policies should be reviewed and should also be updated with the employees on a timely manner. So we'll be taking a look at email communication policy after going over, and we'll just have a brief overview of all these policies, and then we'll take a look at email communication policy. The very first thing is acceptable use policy. Say in brief, you're given when you join an organization, you're given access to the internet, and you're given access to their emails, and you're given access to the data, and you're given access to their softwares. So what is acceptable use is what is permitted. Say if I'm allowed to use the internet in my organization, what all sites I can browse? Can I really access sites other than those that can support my professional development? So that comes under acceptable use policy. Can I send mails to persons or to my friends other than my employees by using my corporate email system? Can I use the printers to print my own documents other than the documents required for my professional development? For instance, some people they used to use the printers for printing their own novels and books. That'll be the corporate printer. So that kind of a thing itself is not acceptable, right? So we have a policy that says what is acceptable use. So let's go over these statements. An acceptable use policy stipulates the constraints and practices that an employee using organizational IT assets must agree in order to access the corporate network or the internet. First you have to agree to this policy. They will say you go through this policy and sign this agreement before giving you an user ID and password to access their resources. That's what the second point says. So every employee should read the acceptable use policy before being granted a network ID. Access control policy, this is a very important policy, like who can access what in an organization. Say in VIT, you can't just really walk into a server room where the server is. Access is restricted for students and faculty too. Only the administrators can enter a server room. So likewise, a faculty can access the data of the students. You can access the examination systems. So you'll be provided certain levels of access with an examination system, whereas students will be given certain levels of access with the examination system. So access control policy is very important. What kind of hardware and software can be accessed and who can access that, and this policy will define everything. So that is access control policy. That's what it says. Or standards for user access, network access, operating system, software controls, and the complexity of corporate passwords. So this access control policy outlines the access available to employees in regards to an organization's data and information system. So which employee has got what access, and how you give that access is very important. And the final thing, this is also very interesting. Say when an employee leaves the organization, what is the policy to remove, or what are the set of guidelines we have to follow to remove the access for the employee? Say you will be accessing VIT University Management System only when you are a student, right? When you leave the organization after you complete the course, you'll be shifted to an alumni database and you'll not be given access to VTalk. The access will be removed. Likewise, when I'm working for VIT, I'll be able to access the VIT database. But once when I'm leaving VIT, immediately the access to all the resources should be removed. Say access to the library, access to the your swipe card itself will be revoked. So access should be removed, and it should be done immediately once when an employee or a student leaves the organization. So all these policies come under access control policy. Change management policy, as IT engineers we know what is the change management. Say any change that happens to any asset in your organization comes under a change management policy, like who can change what. See, we can't go and release another version of our university management system, that we cannot make changes to the code in the university management system. So we have separate set of procedures, processes, and people who can push the changes to the repository. So that comes under change management. Say upgrading a software, upgrading your applications, everything comes under change management. And who can change what, and how will we log these changes, and what kind of software you're going to use, everything comes under the change management policy. Another very important thing with respect to change management policy is if any changes create an adverse impact, how to roll back and go back to our previous versions also come under change management policy. Another certain more things are like who will approve the changes that are being requested, what is the change management board. All these things come under change management policy for an organization. Information security policy. So what is information security policy? Say all the employees who use your information technology assets within the organization or its networks comply with its stated rules and guidelines. So people may be given license to softwares, or people may be using softwares, applications, people may be given access to databases, and they may be even having access to live data of people or bank accounts. So what is information security policy is what such employees should comply with. That comes under information security policy. Say before you join any project in an IT organization, you will be signing a non-disclosure agreement. So they will be giving you a set of statements and guidelines that you have to follow before you're going to access their resources. So all these things come under information security policy. Incidents response policy. This is purely with a response to an incident. Say a data breach happens, how will an incident response team handle that? Who will handle that? And who will be leading that incident response team, and what kind of response should be invoked? Say if a distributed denial of service attacks happens on your web server, then how to handle that? How to reroute, or what kind of action should be taken to avoid disaster happening on your business? So how to continue the business when an disaster happens? So incident response is all about how the company will manage an incident and remediate the impact of operations. So the goal of this policy is, say an incident should not happen, but when it happens, who will be in charge of that, and what kind of actions the person who is in charge of that and the team which is in charge for that will take, and how that damage to the business will be reduced by this kind of an incident response. And they will also be focusing on reducing the recovery time for any of the damage that has say any system goes down because of a damage, then we have to reduce the recovery time for your system. So you have to immediately bring it up, and we have to continue your business operations. These set of guidelines come under incident response. Remote access policy, I have already told you that the set of guidelines and organization should follow when it gives a remote access to an employee. Who should be given remote access is also a very important thing that should be considered here. Email communication. So email or communication policy, this is very important. Now it's because of the pandemic, everything is done online. We are also using Microsoft Teams for our communication. So every communication happens through an email or through a platform like Microsoft Teams, wherein we use the chat facility, the video conferencing, audio conferencing facility. So then there should be a policy that says what is acceptable and what kind of rules or guidelines an employee should follow when it comes to using the corporate email and communication uh, medium. So that comes under email and communication policies. Disaster recovery, this is purely with respect to any disaster happening and recovering from that disaster. Maybe a tsunami taking out your base camp or one of your branches, and how you continue business even after such a disaster happens from another location. Or maybe a pandemic itself can be considered as a disaster, right? We didn't expect it happened so fast, so we are all working from home. That is the disaster recovery. So the operations were not stopped, right? Everything is going on, and with alternate plans. So disaster recovery is will include both cybersecurity and IT teams input, and will be developed as part of the larger business continuity plan. The Chief Information Security Officer and teams will manage an incident through the incident response policy, Say if the event has significant business impact, the business continuity plan will be activated. So what is this business continuity plan? The business continuity plan, the business continuity plan will coordinate efforts across the organization and will use the disaster recovery plan to restore hardware, applications and data deemed essential for business continuity. So in short, how can you explain this? Say if you're having your IT firm, say four branches are there. In one of the branches, say you have an unexpected fire and you're going to lose all your hardware and software there, but still you can continue the business operations of your clients by just managing it from another branch, right? So normally they used to have different copies of the same system in multiple branches. That is like a disaster recovery plan. So even if one branch goes down, the another branch employees will be able to take over and they will be able to manage that disaster. So that is the business continuity plan. No matter what happens, the customers should not be impacted, the business should not be impacted. Somehow the system should be up and running and then it should be supporting the clients. So these are the various types of policies with respect to security policies, and we have a policy for a specific category. I hope by now you'll be clear with all these policies. We'll take a look at a sample email policy and then we'll wind up today's session. What is an email policy? So an email security policy is an official document that details acceptable use of your organization's email system. So we all have our student VIT email ID. As a faculty, I have my own faculty email ID. So what is acceptable use uh, with respect to my email ID? With respect to a corporate email ID is defined in the email policy. So what all things they normally define in an email policy is to whom you can send mails, from whom you can receive mails, and what is an appropriate content to be sent in a mail. All these things will be defined in the email policy. Say, to be very short, I have got my own professional email ID, right? I can't be just using that for registering in a movie website or for shopping. I cannot do such things with my professional email ID, and I should not be say I cannot send attach 4 or 5 songs and send it to my friend. So this is non-professional. So we cannot use a professional email ID for non-professional things like that. So these things come under the company policy. So why we should have an email policy? First of all, we have to protect the organization from liabilities. Say if I use my professional email ID and send an email to some third person, maybe abusing him or harassing him or sending some inappropriate content in my email, then definitely the company will not be responsible for that. The person who is sending the mail will be responsible for this. So when you have a very good drafted email policy and when you're updating that with your employees, any misuse of the emailing system the will be on the shoulders of the employee rather than the organization, because such activities should not defame the organization. Promote a professional environment. This is again a very interesting point. Say as a professor, I'll be using my email ID only for having professional communication with my co-workers or my students. I'll not be using my email ID for sending my personal messages and contents to my friends or to my relatives, because that will spoil the professional atmosphere. And while you're working for an IT firm or when you're working on projects, if you send your personal emails by mistake to your client, so when you're mixing both together, there's a chance that you will send a personal email to your client, and that brings a very bad impression on the kind of work culture in an organization. So a professional and a company email policy will also help in promoting professional environment. Increase productivity. So this is again another thing. When in companies, a corporate email is used for personal purposes, People spend a lot of time typing personal mails, chatting with friends, or if they use the communication medium in a personal way, then it's going to be a lot of waste of hours, and thereby the productivity of the organization will get impacted. So normally, all the organizations will not allow the use of corporate email IDs for personal purposes. Establishing systems for email. Say when you have a very good email policy, the structure of your email, the content that is being sent by your employees to others can also be regularized, and thereby there can be a brand image created. Say whenever you see email sent by faculty from top management and other deans and directors from our VIT university, you can see a very good signature, the contact, the address, the designation, and also the logo of VIT, and then the achievements of VIT also given as a signature. So this kind of an email, when it is being sent to others, and when that kind of a structure, a professional structure is being followed by all employees, then a brand image is also getting built by such an email policy. So we'll take a look at sample email security policy, and then we'll wind up. What is inappropriate use of company email that is being drafted in this email security policies? Say our employees represent our company, and whenever they use their corporate email address, they must not, say the employees should not sign up for illegal, unreliable, disreputable, or suspect websites and services. Never use your corporate email IDs for any such things, doing any illegal things, and don't do any illegal things, no matter what email ID is. And do not use your email ID to register in things that is not related to your professional work. And do not send marketing content or solicitation emails. Sometimes I have seen that some employees, not here, not in VIT, I mean the previous organization, like sending marketing mails. Okay, you try this product or try that product. So such kind of mails should not be sent using companies corporate's email system. And registering for a competitor service unless authorized, this is also not allowed. So you should not register for a competitor's products or a service by using your corporate email ID. And this is very normal, right? We know this. You cannot send insulting, discriminatory content using your email system, and you cannot intentionally spam others emails using your email ID. So this is coming under inappropriate use of company email. So this is a sample I have taken. Again, this is drafted by the organization, and they may be telling you what kind of guidelines you have to follow. Sometimes it might be very stricter. For instance, I was working in an organization that has a very strict code of conduct with respect to emails. You are not allowed to send any email to other than the people you are working with. So if you are going to send an email to say a Gmail account, then immediately that email will be blocked, and then you will be fired from your job, straightforward. And you're not supposed to share your email ID with third parties or persons who are not part of your organization. So these kinds of things were very strict in the IT organization I was working with, because they were working with critical data that was dealing with personals in the army. So that's why that kind of an strict email policy was there. So we were not allowed to send emails to even our friends, or no such communication. You should not send an email from your corporate email to even your Gmail account. Even that was getting blocked. So again, that kind of inappropriate use of a company email will be drafted by the companies again. What is appropriate use? We can always use emails to for professional communication, to log into legitimate softwares used by the organization. For instance, here we are using Microsoft Teams, and we are using our corporate email ID for logging into that. And giving email addresses to people, maybe I can share my email addresses with professors or conference chairs outside our organization, only for professional development or whatever professional activity I'm carrying out, I can share my email ID, and I can sign up for newsletters or libraries or journals wherein it encourages professional development. I can use that. So you have to use your email ID only when it motivates professional development and professionalism in the organization. Personal use, again, this can vary with respect to firm that is drafting the policy. As I told you, in when the data is very critical, personal use of the corporate email ID is strictly prohibited. And as an employee, I was not even able to send a mail from my mail account to Gmail ID, to my own Gmail ID. That is blocked actually, and if I try to do that, it will be caught and immediately they will fire that employee. So that is the kind of regulations and email policy has. And some organizations, they may allow personal emails to a certain extent, like you can just send a mail to your friend who is abroad, or whom you know, but with certain limitations. The kind of content should be still professional. You can just put up movies or some inappropriate pictures, or you cannot have music being sent, and that will be either filtered or blocked. But you can always use emails for registering online classes, say that's comes under professional development. And emails to friends and family, as long as they don't spam or disclose confidential information, that is allowed to a certain extent. Downloading ebooks, guides, or any materials, that's for personal use, but still it is safe to do that. Email security, so again, when it comes to security, there can be a policy on the kind of passwords that employees should have for logging into their email system, how frequently they should change their passwords, and they should not write their passwords, and they should only remember their passwords, and they should not use common passwords or passwords that can be guessed. So again, these things, security of an email, can also come under the policy. Again, when it comes to security, these things come under security policy, like employees should not be clicking on suspicious links, and avoid opening any attachments that are suspicious. Be suspicious of clickbait titles. Check email on names of unknown senders. Say if you're getting an email, you have to say if you're getting an email, you have to ensure that that is from a legitimate sender, and look for inconsistencies or styles or red flags. Say a lot of grammar mistakes in the email, capital letters, excessive number of exclamation marks. All these things may say that that email that you're getting is not from a legitimate sender. And if you have any doubts on the email that you have received, if you think that is suspicious, you can always contact the security specialists of your organization. Email signature, so here is what this is what I was telling you. Like if you have a very good email signature, like employee name, employee title, company name with link, phone number, company address, and also any professional images, company logos, or work related videos can be added as your email signature. Thereby we develop a sense of professionalism, and also we create a brand image for the firm. So even this, what kind of signature that each and every employee should have, will also be part of the email policy. Finally, the email policy also contains disciplinary action. So what is the disciplinary action for those who don't follow our policy? As an organization, they will have a complete policy, and if employees don't follow the policy, what kind of actions, disciplinary action, will be taken? And this disciplinary action can be up to termination. A simple misuse of the email can put you under termination, no matter how good you are in your performance. As I was telling you, certain organizations even bar the employees from sending a mail from their mail ID to their Gmail ID, because they consider that to be a data breach. So if someone does that, no matter how good his performance is, and if the policy says he should be terminated, they will be terminated. So you have to be very cautious when you are having such a policy. You should know, we should be well aware of the policy, and you should use it. Sometimes using the corporate email for registering in entertainment sites, or trying to use the corporate email in registering in sites that are inappropriate will lead to termination. So you have to be very cautious while you are sending emails, what kind of content you are putting. You should not harass or abuse or send any kind of emails that is not professional, because email itself becomes the evidence, and emails are archived and emails are stored and can be retrieved for future references. So never perform all these things, and always when you join an organization, know the email security policy, know all the security policies and what you have to adhere as an employee for that organization, and see to that you never misuse or you don't deviate from what is given in the policy. I hope you all have understood what is a security policy, types of security policies, and what will be there in an email security policy. Thank you.